Every year it came, same time, same cheerful tone, same gut punch. The email from Tyson: "Hey fam, looking forward to another amazing lake week. Let us know if you're in." I didn't even finish reading it before closing the tab. My name's Darren Walker. I'm 41 years old, living in Columbus, Ohio, and I've been unofficially uninvited to my family's annual reunion at our childhood lake cabin for the past 7 years. Not once in writing, of course. My mom, Loretta, is too gracious for that. But there's always a reason. Always. Last year it was Tyson's kids needing the bunk beds. The year before that, Wyatt's new wife was allergic to pet dander. Never mind, I don't even own a dog. Every single summer, there's a subtle reshuffling of excuses until I'm not on the list. This year would be no different. I kept the email open just long enough to feel the sting before Brandon walked up behind my desk. Let me guess, Lake House email day? I minimized the window so fast I almost slammed my mouse. "Bran, not today." He raised his hands like I'd pointed a gun at him. "All right, man, just don't let it get to you again." I forced a smile. "I'm not. It's just a stupid weekend." But it wasn't. It never was. No matter how many times I told myself it didn't matter, that I was used to being overlooked, it still cracked something small and tender inside. Brandon wasn't wrong. He's been my colleague and closest friend at Apex Logistics for almost a decade. He's seen me take the high road more times than I care to count. But what he didn't see, what no one did, was how I used to count the days to those lake trips as a kid. Back then, Tyson got to ride shotgun with Dad on the fishing boat. Wyatt always got to help him grill. I was the one who stayed behind to help Mom tidy up, which meant watching the cooler and handing out sodas to whatever cousins were around. I thought, maybe, just maybe, when we grew up, it would change. Spoiler, it didn't. I went back to my work inbox, trying to shake it off. I had a logistics proposal to finish before the quarter ended, and I needed to focus. But then my phone buzzed. Mom. I stared at her name on the screen like it was a countdown to some small explosion. I knew exactly what was coming. I answered anyway. "Hi, Mom." "Hi, honey," she said, her voice warm in that way she uses when she knows she's about to say something shitty. "I wanted to talk to you about the reunion." There it was. We're just so cramped this year. Wyatt's bringing his stepkids, and Tyson's oldest made the regional swim team, so we had to block off the whole bottom floor for them. I didn't say anything. I just let her talk. "I hope you understand. It's not personal, Darren. It's just logistics." I almost laughed at that. Me, the actual VP of Strategic Operations, getting bumped from a family vacation because of logistics. "Sure," I said flatly. "Not personal at all." Loretta hesitated. "Maybe we could FaceTime you in for the fireworks?" That did it. I hung up. Not rudely, just firmly. Quietly. That was the moment something shifted in me. Maybe I've learned to shrug it off all these years, but this time, I wasn't sure I should, and maybe I wouldn't. The envelope sat on my desk like it was daring me to open it. Heavy cardstock, company seal, gold lettering on the flap. I already knew what was inside, but I still took my time. VP of Strategic Operations. The youngest in Apex history. Signed, sealed, official. I leaned back in my chair and stared at the ceiling. I should have felt elated, thrilled, something. But all I could think was, would they even care? I grabbed my phone and dialed Frank. He answered on the first ring. "Walker, they give it to you?" "Yeah," I said, exhaling. "It's official." Frank let out a long whistle. "Damn right it is. You've earned it, kid. Hell, you've carried that department for years." I laughed a little, but it didn't quite reach. "You think the family will say anything?" There was a pause on the line. Then, "Don't hold your breath, but that's okay. Success is best when it's impossible to ignore." I nodded, even though he couldn't see me. "Yeah, you're right." After we hung up, I dove back into work. No time to sit in it, not when I had the biggest partnership pitch of my career coming up. Apex was making a regional expansion, Midwest distribution hubs, new tech integrations, full overhaul of the supply chain. I was the lead. I lived on black coffee and protein bars for the next week. Slept in my office twice. The numbers were solid, the projections even better. I could almost see the whole boardroom leaning in when I'd present. But the second I got a minute to breathe, the ache came crawling back. Later that night, Jason called. We hadn't talked in a few weeks, but he still had that same laid-back tone. "You still ignoring your feelings through spreadsheets, or can we actually talk like humans now?" I snorted. "I don't ignore feelings." You bury them in color-coded tabs and $4.5 million budgets. Fair. There was a beat of silence. Then Jason got to it. So you got the promotion. That's amazing, man. Seriously, you told your mom yet? I didn't answer. Darren, he said, voice dropping, are you still waiting for that woman to act like you matter? I rubbed my forehead. I don't know. I just thought, maybe this time, maybe they'd say something. You mean Tyson and Wyatt? He asked. The two clowns who used to lock you out of the boat shed because you whined too much? Or your mom who thinks emotional distance is a parenting strategy? Jesus, Jace. Sorry, but come on. You've got a corner office and a 6-figure salary, and they still treat you like you forgot to take out the trash. I sighed. Yeah, sometimes I think if I stack up enough wins, they'll finally see me. Jason didn't say anything for a second. Then, you know what I think? What? I think it's time you stop trying to earn people who already decided they don't value you. That landed hard. Quiet settled between us. I'm not saying you go burn the place down, he added, but maybe it's time you stopped waiting for the damn invitation. What's that supposed to mean? It means, Jason said, maybe you make your own move, not revenge, reclamation. I frowned. Like what? Like buying the damn lake house. I actually laughed. Don't be ridiculous. That place has been in our family forever. Exactly. Your family, right? I froze. Then something in me cracked open. A couple days later, I was up late finishing a slide deck for the regional pitch when I started messing around online. Just a random thought. Curious. I typed the address of the lake cabin into a real estate site, and there it was, listed. A quiet private listing. Off-market opportunity. Cash buyers preferred. I stared at the screen, heart pounding, and for the first time in my entire life, I realized something. I had the money. I had the means. And this time, I wouldn't need their permission. The deal closed on a Thursday. The regional expansion pitch had been scheduled for 9 a.m. sharp in the Apex boardroom. 12 people at the table, 3 video feeds up on the wall, all eyes on me. I wore the navy suit I saved for big days, the one Frank said made me look like a man who already knew he'd won. By the time I finished walking them through the projected year 2 numbers, the COO leaned forward and asked, "What would it take to do this nationwide?" That's when I knew I had them. The room buzzed with quiet chatter as I sat down again. Frank gave me the smallest nod across the table. One part proud, one part amused. Later, he found me in the hallway, his tie loosened, the corners of his mouth twitching like he was trying not to smile too hard. You just bought yourself a seat at the big table, Walker. I laughed. Feels like I've been standing outside the door for years. He clapped a hand on my shoulder. Well, the door's open now, and if you want the Singapore Post, say the word. Global strategy, full relocation package, stock, the works. I blinked. You're serious? Always, Frank said, then walked off whistling like he hadn't just dropped a bomb. That night, I went home too wired to sleep. I grabbed some takeout and was about to open my laptop again when Jason showed up at my apartment door with a 6-pack and a bag of tacos. You forget how to text back, he asked. I was working. Like hell you were, he said, stepping inside. You were pacing and obsessing. Am I wrong? He wasn't. We sat on the floor with food containers between us. I told him everything about the promotion, the Singapore offer, the boardroom. Then I pulled out my phone and showed him the lake house listing. Jason's eyebrows shot up. You serious? I nodded slowly. I've already spoken to a broker. It's not even on MLS yet. The owner, some distant cousin of my mom's, he's trying to offload it quick. Says he can't keep up with the repairs. Jason grinned. Then what the hell are we waiting for? By Monday, I had a name on the LLC, a cash offer in hand, and a contract ready to go. I closed on the cabin within 2 weeks. The plumbing was shot. The dock had half collapsed. The roof needed resealing. None of that mattered. I'd already hired a local contractor, one who owed me a favor after I helped him land a commercial warehouse gig last year. Renovations were underway by the following Monday. Dock rebuilt, new fire pit. Retiled kitchen, nothing flashy, just clean, strong, and intentional. I didn't tell anyone in my family. Not Loretta, not Tyson, not Wyatt. I just waited. And the wait didn't take long. On Friday evening, my phone buzzed with a text from Tyson. Hey man, we're doing the usual family meeting about the reunion this weekend. You in? I stared at it. They had no idea. No idea that the place they'd used to shut me out for years now had my name on the deed. No clue that every excuse, every no room this year had just expired like spoiled milk. I didn't reply right away. I just scrolled back up and reread the message twice. And for the first time in my life, I smiled at a family text, not because I felt included, but because I didn't need their approval anymore. They'd be meeting soon, planning beds, assigning rooms, assuming the same rules still applied. They were wrong, because this time, the house belonged to me. And this time, I'd be the one holding the keys. The reunion was set for the second weekend of June, same as always. I didn't tell them anything beforehand. No hints, no heads up, nothing. Just let them plan it like they always did, with Loretta overseeing room assignments and Tyson acting like the house manager. I arrived at the lake house a day early. The place looked better than it had in years. The new dock stretched out into the water, solid and smooth. The siding was clean, the porch freshly stained. Inside, the plumbing actually worked. The back bunk room didn't smell like mildew anymore. Every corner of the place had been touched by someone who gave a damn. The morning of the reunion, I brewed a full pot of coffee, put on a soft playlist of soul classics, and sat at the kitchen table flipping through a magazine. I had the front door propped open, waiting. They rolled in around 10 a.m., just like clockwork. Tyson's SUV first. Then Wyatt in his truck. Then Loretta, of course, pulling up in that baby blue sedan she refused to replace. I heard the first rattle of keys before I saw their faces. Tyson was jiggling the knob, frowning. "Mom, did you change the lock?" Loretta tried next. Her key jammed halfway in before she stopped. "This can't be right." Then Wyatt stepped forward, already annoyed. "Did someone forget to leave the spare?" That's when I got up and walked to the door. "Morning," I said. They all froze. Tyson blinked. Darren?" Wyatt tilted his head. "What are you doing here?" I leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed. "I live here." Loretta narrowed her eyes. "Sweetheart, we're just trying to get inside. Your uncle was supposed to drop off the keys." "He didn't," I said, keeping my tone even. "Because he sold the house." "What?" Tyson's voice cracked. "Sold it to who?" I pulled the deed from my back pocket and held it up between two fingers. "Me." They stared. I let that land for a good 10 seconds before stepping aside. "Come in." They walked in slowly, like the walls might bite them. Loretta looked around like she didn't recognize the place. Tyson made a beeline for the fridge. Wyatt hovered near the couch. The silence was beautiful. "Coffee?" I asked. Loretta found her voice first. "I don't understand. When did this happen?" "Few weeks ago," I said. "Place was quietly listed by Uncle Roy. He needed out. I had the means. The rest is history." Tyson ran a hand through his hair. "Why didn't he tell us?" I shrugged. "Maybe he assumed you wouldn't care. You only ever showed up once a year." Wyatt was scowling. "So what? You bought the house to keep us out." "No," I said, calm as glass. "I bought it because I could. Because I've been told for years there wasn't space. Now there is, and I'm the one who decides who gets in." No one spoke. I walked to the cabinet, grabbed mugs, and started pouring coffee. I fixed the broken septic line, replaced the roof, rebuilt the dock, hired local workers, paid full rates, got rid of the mildew in the bunk room too. Tyson was pacing now. "I mean, what are we supposed to do? We came all this way." "Then stay," I said, setting mugs on the table. "Have your reunion. Let's see what it feels like to be guests in my house." Loretta sat down slowly, still stunned. "You did all this alone?" I nodded. "Every check, every call, every decision." Wyatt looked around like the walls had betrayed him. "So now what? You gonna sell it again? Flip it for profit?" I smiled. "Nope, I'm keeping it." They all stared. I took a sip of coffee and leaned against the counter. "You wanted a reunion? Let's have one." Loretta cleared her throat. "And after that, what's your plan?" I reached for my phone, opened an email, and turned the screen toward them. Frank offered me Singapore, international operations, full relocation. I said yes. Tyson sat down hard. Wyatt looked like he'd been slapped. I set my cup down and let the silence stretch. "I start in September," I added, "so this summer's the last time I'll be here for a while." Loretta's eyes welled, but she didn't say a word. For once, they didn't have a script. No guilt trips, no justifications. Just three people sitting in a house they thought they owned, realizing too late that I'd already left them behind, and I wasn't coming back the same. We spent the first hour circling each other like strangers in a museum, pretending to look at things we already knew. Wyatt stood in the driveway half the morning, muttering into his phone. Tyson sat in the screened porch, scrolling endlessly, like someone was going to text him a reason this wasn't real. Loretta moved through the house slow and quiet, her fingers grazing surfaces like she was checking if they remembered her. I let them sit in it. Later that afternoon, I climbed up into the attic and brought down the old trunk, the one with the marker-smeared toy cars, water-warped photo albums, and a stack of faded 4th of July t-shirts. I laid it all out on the living room floor like a time capsule they didn't want to see. "This was mine," I said, holding up a plastic fire truck with a melted wheel. "Dad gave it to me after I broke my arm that summer." No one responded, except I only got it because Tyson got a better one, so they gave me this and said it was almost the same. Tyson looked up from his phone, lips tight. I pulled out a Polaroid. Loretta, young and smiling, standing next to Wyatt on the dock. Tyson was holding a fish the size of a shoebox. "I'm not in a single one of the photos from that trip," I said. "You told me to stay home that weekend, said there wasn't room in the truck." "Darren," Loretta started. "You were sick that week. You had a fever." "I was fine by Thursday," I cut in. "You left Friday morning." She closed her mouth. I grabbed another photo. Birthday cake, 7 candles, Tyson beaming in the center. Me in the background, out of focus, wearing a paper hat that didn't fit. I've celebrated half my birthdays alone, not because I didn't invite anyone, but because no one came. Loretta's voice wavered. "You know we never meant to make you feel unwanted," I snapped. "Invisible?" The room went quiet. "I got promoted to VP this year, youngest in company history," I said. "Frank said it was historic. First thing I did was check my phone for a text from you." "Nothing." Tyson shifted on the couch. "I didn't know." "You didn't ask." Wyatt leaned forward, elbows on knees. "Look, maybe we didn't handle things right, but we didn't know you cared about all that." I stared at him. "You knew. You just didn't think I'd get far enough to matter." No one moved. I pulled 3 envelopes from my backpack and set them on the table. "Those are your hotel reservations. I booked you suites at the lodge across the lake. They're nice, nicer than this place ever was." Tyson looked confused. "You're kicking us out?" "No," I said calmly. "I'm ending the cycle." Loretta blinked. "What cycle?" "The one where you pretend I don't belong, where I show up anyway, hoping for scraps. Not this time. This house needs rest. So do I." Wyatt stood up fast. "So that's it? You just cut us out?" I walked to the window, looked out at the dock glinting in the sun. "I'm not cutting anyone out," I said, "but I'm changing the rules." I turned to face them. "You want a reunion? Fine, but it doesn't happen in my shadow, and it doesn't happen under your terms." Loretta's voice cracked. "Do we still get to come back?" "Maybe," I said, "if you learn how to knock first." Tyson's mouth opened, then closed. I stepped back toward the stairs, heart racing. "You can stay for the evening," I said. "Dinner's at 7. After that, I suggest you get some rest. Long drive to the lodge." I didn't wait for a reply. I just climbed the stairs 2 at a time, leaving the weight of years sitting stunned in my living room. Let them sit with it. I'd carried it long enough. The lake house had this narrow balcony that overlooked the water, barely wide enough for 2 chairs and a side table. It used to be where Dad smoked cigars and sipped cheap bourbon, always saying he was soaking in the quiet. I never once saw him invite anyone else up there. That night, Loretta asked if we could talk. "Just the 2 of us," she said, her voice softer than usual. Not gentle, just quieter, like she didn't want anyone else to hear her uncertainty. I didn't answer right away, but I didn't say no either. I poured myself a cup of coffee, black, and walked out onto the balcony. A few seconds later, she followed, holding something small in her hands. She sat down in the chair across from me, carefully, like the wood might give out. She didn't look at me at first, just stared out at the lake like it held answers she couldn't say aloud. "I brought something," she said finally. She handed me an old shoebox. I recognized it immediately. It used to hold my 5th-grade sneakers, white with red laces I begged for. Inside now was a mess of clippings, folded programs, and crinkled photos. I pulled one out, a newspaper article from a local business column with a photo of me standing in front of Apex's first regional hub. She kept going. "Your college graduation program. The one I couldn't attend because Tyson broke his arm that week. Your early employee of the year plaques. Printouts from your website when you launched the logistics division." I stared at the box in silence. "I kept track," she said, "even if I didn't say it. I didn't know how to say sorry without making it worse. I looked at her, trying to see her as a woman instead of a role. She looked tired, not weak, but like someone who'd finally started carrying the truth. You told me there wasn't space, I said, my voice low, year after year, and I believed you. Her hands trembled in her lap. I didn't think you wanted to come. Of course I did, I snapped, but you only made room for the sons who made sense to you. Loretta winced. I thought if I left you alone, maybe you wouldn't need as much from me. I didn't need money. I didn't need attention. I just needed to matter. She looked away. Just then, the balcony door creaked open. Jason stepped out, hoodie half-zipped, 2 beers in hand. Didn't know we were hosting family therapy, he said, giving me a raised eyebrow. I half laughed. It's not therapy. It's late. Jason looked at Loretta. You good? She nodded once. I just needed to say some things. Jason glanced at me. I gave a small nod. He handed me a beer, squeezed my shoulder, and disappeared back inside. Loretta wiped at her eyes, but no tears came. Just the motion. The attempt. Can we try again? She asked. I didn't answer for a long time. The water below rippled with moonlight. A loon called from across the lake, long and low. You'll have to do better than that, I said finally. She nodded. Not like she agreed. More like she understood the weight of what she was asking. A knock came from downstairs. Then a voice. Darren? Tyson. Can we come up? I looked at Loretta. She looked at me. Your brothers, she said, sitting straighter. They've been talking since dinner. I think they're scared. I didn't say anything. I stood, walked to the door, and called down. Give me 5 minutes. Okay, Tyson replied. We'll wait. I turned back to Loretta. You wanted a second chance? I said. This is how it starts. She gave a small nod. I'll take it. I picked up the shoebox and carried it inside, placing it gently on the mantel, because it didn't erase the pain. But it was something, and for now, something was enough. The reunion dinner looked nothing like the ones they used to host. Gone were the paper plates, the folding chairs, the lopsided potluck where someone always forgot to bring ice. This time we had linen napkins, plated courses, and a private room at the Briarwood Country Club, 10 miles from the lake house. I planned everything. Sent out digital RSVPs, arranged transportation, booked a local jazz trio to play during cocktail hour. If someone didn't like it, they'd have to complain to me directly. No one did. At 6:45, I stood near the head of the long banquet table, dressed in a tailored charcoal suit. I didn't blend in. I stood out. And for once, I didn't shrink from it. I leaned into it. People arrived in waves. Cousins I hadn't seen in years. Wyatt and his wife trying too hard to look relaxed. Tyson, unusually quiet, guiding his 2 boys to their seats. Loretta walked in last, wearing her navy shawl, the one she used to save for church. She gave me a nod as she passed. Not approval, not pity, just recognition. That was enough. When everyone was seated and the salad course was cleared, Frank showed up. I hadn't told the family he was coming. Most of them didn't even know who he was. But when he entered the room in that sharp blue suit with his signature half smirk, every eye turned toward him. Frank stood behind his chair, clinked his fork against his glass, and smiled. Sorry to interrupt the wine and warm bread, but I wanted to say a few words. I felt my stomach tighten. Frank looked at me, then at the table. Some of you know Darren as your brother, cousin, or son. I know him as the guy who rebuilt our regional strategy from the ground up. The guy who once ran a $70 million logistics pipeline smoother than most people run their inboxes. He reached into his coat pocket and held up a magazine. This, he said, turning it to show the cover, is next month's issue of Global Ops Weekly. That's Darren on the front. Headline reads, The Quiet Architect of Apex's Global Expansion. A small wave of gasps and murmurs rolled through the room. Tyson looked stunned. Wyatt blinked, mouth half open. Frank laid the magazine on the table. In a few months, he'll be leading international operations out of Singapore, and if you don't already know how big that is, you will. He raised his glass. To Darren Walker, the guy who did it all without waiting for permission. Everyone lifted their glasses, even Loretta. I stayed seated, heart pounding, pretending to sip from my water glass. After the toast, Tyson approached me near the bar. His tie was crooked, and he looked like someone trying to say something important without knowing how. My son, Luke, he started. He's 17, sharp kid, got a business mind. Think maybe you could talk to him sometime? Maybe mentor him a little? I nodded once. Sure, have him call me. Tyson exhaled, relieved. Thanks, man. Seriously. A few minutes later, Wyatt wandered over. He coughed awkwardly into his hand. I've been thinking, he said. Maybe we could, I don't know, reconnect. Grab a beer sometime, if you're not too busy. I shrugged. Could be good. I'll let you know when I'm back in town. Wyatt gave a sheepish nod and walked away. Toward the end of the night, Loretta pulled me aside as guests were filtering out. Will we see you next year? She asked, gently. I smiled, but it wasn't soft. If you earn it. She didn't flinch. I'd like to try, she said quietly. I looked around at the place, at the people, the conversations, the structure I'd built from the ground up. This wasn't about revenge. Not anymore. It was about balance. And this time, I wasn't the afterthought. I was the center, because this time, I was the one hosting. The lake house was quiet in the way only places full of history can be, like it was holding its breath for the next chapter. I stood in the hallway, surrounded by half-packed boxes and folded shirts, trying to decide whether to bring the framed photo of me and Jason from college or the goofy shot of us holding fish on the old dock last summer. Jason wandered in with a half-empty bag of trail mix and a duffel slung over his shoulder. You're seriously packing flip-flops for Singapore? He said, poking at my open suitcase. You know it's humid, not casual. I refuse to sweat in wingtips for 12 hours a day. He grinned. Fair. We went through a few drawers, laughing about the junk I still had lying around. Old Apex badges, a cracked coffee mug from my first job, the miniature snow globe I stole from Wyatt when I was 9 and never gave back. Think they'll notice you're gone? Jason asked, suddenly quieter. Not at first, I said, but eventually. He nodded like he already knew. Then he turned to the window. Looks like you've got company. I followed his gaze. Loretta was walking up the drive, alone. She held something small in her hand, like she wasn't sure whether to offer it or hide it. Jason gave me a look, then disappeared down the hall with his trail mix. She didn't knock, just paused on the porch, then let herself in the way she always used to, quietly, like she was trying not to wake the house. Hi, sweetheart, she said softly. Hey! She stepped forward and held out the object in her hand. It was a small brass key, the old house key, the one Dad used to keep on a leather loop that hung by the fireplace. It's yours now, she said. For real this time. I stared at it for a second, then took it carefully. It was heavier than I remembered. I know this doesn't fix anything, she said, but maybe it's a start. Maybe, I said, slipping the key into my pocket. Tyson arrived later that afternoon, towing a weathered toolbox and a binder. Thought you might want to hang on to Dad's stuff, he said. He kept notes on the plumbing and the insulation, weirdly organized, actually. Thanks, I said, taking it from him. He'd like that you remembered. Tyson gave me a small smile. Also, Luke got into a summer business program. He's been reading up on logistics. I think he's trying to impress you. Tell him he already has. He left without much more than that, but it was enough. Wyatt showed up an hour later with a printout of an online course. Business leadership, he said I could do it at my own pace. Figured better late than never, right? I didn't say anything. Just clapped him on the back. That was enough, too. Loretta lingered longest. She cleaned out the old fridge, folded the towels, even straightened the porch cushions like she used to when no one was looking. Before she left, she stood in the doorway and looked at me one last time. I'm proud of you, she said. I didn't reply right away, but just before she turned to go, I said, Thanks, Mom. Jason peeked out from the kitchen, a grin on his face. You ready to own Asia? He asked. I zipped my suitcase, took one last glance around the house, and smiled. I already do. The skyline of Singapore looked like a movie set, clean, sharp, futuristic. From the top floor of the Apex International Building, I could see the harbor stretching out like a promise. The office was twice the size of my old one back home, with polished glass walls, sleek furniture, and a desk I hadn't even used yet. Behind me, a sign hung on the wall in brushed steel letters, D. Walker, SVP International Operations. A reporter sat across from me, notebook in hand, voice recorder blinking red on the table between us. Tell me, she said, how did a kid from Ohio end up here? I leaned back, hands clasped in my lap. I'd rehearsed this answer a dozen times, but when it came time to speak, I didn't go with the polished version. Legacy, I said. Most people think that word means inheritance, something handed down, but for me, Legacy is what you build when no one believes you will. She nodded, scribbling. I talked about logistics, growth, long nights. But in between the metrics, I slipped in the truth. There was a time, I said, when I kept trying to earn respect from people who had already decided I didn't matter. I thought if I just achieved enough, they'd see me differently. And did they? She asked. I smiled faintly. Eventually, but by the time they did, I'd already stopped waiting. After the interview, I walked back into my office and opened my phone. I had one unread message in the Walker family group chat. Yes, that was a thing now. A photo. Tyson, Wyatt, Loretta, and even Wyatt's wife, all standing in someone's living room, holding little Mandarin phrase books, grinning. The caption read, "Practicing for Singapore 2026. Better have room for us." I chuckled and shook my head. Then I stepped out onto the balcony. The city hummed below. Planes took off in the distance. Somewhere down there, shipments were moving on time because of a system I helped create. I snapped a quick photo of the view and sent it back to the group. No words, just the picture. A minute later, Loretta replied, "You built something beautiful, sweetheart?" I didn't reply. I just looked out at the city again, letting the quiet wrap around me. It wasn't perfect, but it was progress. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't chasing anyone's approval. This was my story now. My house. My terms. My legacy.